rahmatullah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. My dear brothers and sisters, when our beloved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam prepared Mohamed Al Jammali to go to Yemen, as the Prophet gave an assignment to some of his companions to carry the mission and to spread the goodness, and that group are going to Yemen, and the Prophet advised them with different advices. And then he turned to Mu'adh and he said, Bima tahkum, in which way you are going to judge in between? Meaning, what is your reference? What is your source of a judgment? And how you are going to apply, that, and how you're going to spread the teaching of Islam. He said, Bikitabillah, I will consider first as a prime source is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he said, if you couldn't find a clear teaching or direction or instruction in the Quran, then be sunnati Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then, that will be the sunnah. So that's the second source for us, which obviously that sunnah will never contradict the Quran. It came to explain what was generally mentioned in the Quran. And then he said, فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدْ قَالَ أَجْتَهِدُ وَلَا آلُ. I will make my judgment at that moment. So the person that he's qualified, and of course he's qualified in this, I will do my best to find the right answer in that matter. And I will do my best. وَلَا آلُ لَا أُقَصِّرُ. Then the Prophet, he tapped on his chest and he was happy with that. And said, Alhamdulillah, الذي وفق رسول الله لما يحبه رسول الله. That all praise be to Allah, the one he right tawfiq, the one he guided the messenger of the messenger of Rasulullah, of Allah, to the matters that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and the Prophet loves. So in our Sharia and our teaching, we have sources. And we have to understand those sources. And that main structure, that's very clear in the Quran as a direction, what sources you follow, and very clear in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And as all school of thought agreed on 4 of those sources: Quran, Sunnah, Ijma', Qiyas. And every Muslim should know a little about all of those and respect those sources. If we don't have really sources and we don't have common references, then we'll have lack of a practice. And all of those have its own weight. And in that sequence, Quran is first, and then Sunnah, and then Ijma', and then Qiyas. And Ijma' and Qiyas is going back to the same sources, Quran and Sunnah. And Sunnah going back to the Quran. So it's the main source is the Quran. And then the Sunnah, and then the Ijma', and then the Qiyas. There's a verse in the Quran, in Surah An-Nisa, Allah hinted those 4. Any of you have any clue about it? I just mentioned the surah. I will mention to you even the number of the verse. Anyone, until I find the number of the verse, anyone has any clue about this one? The 4 of them were mentioned in one verse in the Quran, in Surah An-Nisa. Verse number 59. MashaAllah, that's correct, Sheikh Abdul Rahman. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم فإن تنازعتم في شيء فردوه إلى الله والرسول إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, all believers, obey Allah and obey the messenger and those in authority among you. And if you disagree over anything, refer it to Allah and the Messenger. If you should believe in Allah and the last day, that is the best way and the best end result. So, ya then I'm going to obey Allah. And how you obey Allah? Through His book. So that's going back to the first source, which is the Quran. And obey the Messenger. This is standing by itself. The language is important here. Allah said, obey Allah and obey the Messenger. But when it comes to Ulil Amri, He didn't say, well, obey. No, and those of authority among you. Because the Sunnah is standing by itself as a source. However, the opinion of scholars is not standing as a source, has to be going back to Quran and Sunnah. So the second source, obey the Messenger, which is the Sunnah. And the third one, وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ. So those umara and ulama, those have been with authority, and in the beginning, even the umara, they used to be ulama. And that's why the Khalifa, another title for Khalifa, is the Imam. Because they were the most pious, the most knowledgeable at that time. So going back to Ahl al-Halli wal-Aqdi, the special people of knowledge, and where they have certain knowledge of, they agree on a matter that by itself, it became a reference. And they will not agree from space, from the vacuum where there is no reference. No. They agree on a certain interpretation and understanding in the Quran and Sunnah. Al-Ijma' labudda lahu min sanadin. So when they agree about matter, that they agree on a text, but somebody say, okay, you know what? If they agree on the text, already the text is there. So what's the point? No. There is a point of that. Because the text has different interpretation. So if they agree on one certain point of that interpretation, the other one should be negated. That will become a source. I'll give you an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَا تَنْكِحُوا مَا نَكَحَ آبَاؤُكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ. Do not marry those your parents are married. And now when you say do not marry, like word married in Arabic, nikah, could be the actual marriage when they live under roof together, under one roof together, where they could, they finalize the marriage, or just having the contract. Even having the contract called married. May I give you an evidence with that? In Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah said, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا نَكَحْتُمُ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ ثُمَّ طَلَّقْتُمُهُنَّ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَن تَمَسُّوهُنَّ. Allah used the word nikah, and then in the same ayah He said, when you divorce them before touching them. So the word nikah can be the actual marriage without consuming the marriage, or when they finalize the marriage. So now, if a lady that your father just has a contract without being together under one roof, are you still allowed to marry, or it's finalized? You cannot. So now here when the ijma' comes, they agreed that the meaning of it, even mujarradul aqd, even just having the contract, your father having a contract in a lady, that's become forbidden for the son to marry that lady. So even, though the word nikah could be, consuming the marriage, but in this context, the only meaning that valuable and agreed upon as an ijma', that's just a contract. Am I clear? So this is the third source, and you have to follow that one. If you are not following the ijma', the agreement of scholars, then who you will follow? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ. This opinion was a path and the way of the believers of practice. How come you will choose your own while all ummah agreed on the matter? The fourth source is qiyas. Qiyas maybe needs a time to explain, but in a simple word, texts are limited. We do have Quran and Sunnah, are limited, but matters are developing and matters are just a new arrival where, you know, you don't know exactly what's the ruling of that. And we need that ruling. For example, drugs, with all type of drugs, where people using cocaine or heroin or all of those types, there's no mention of that in the Quran or Sunnah. So what we know, like how do you know it's halal or haram? So when you have a matter, the ruling of that, it's clear. And the reason of that was known as clear as well, why that was forbidden. So if a new matter carry same reason, have the same illah, same reason, then will carry the same ruling. You get the point? So why alcohol was prohibited? Because you make your mind absent. So anything lead to the same things take the same ruling. That's called qiyas. You make analogic reasoning. When you measure something that knowing with something that you didn't know about it, and you made that connection based on the illah, the reason was mentioned in there. Like now in the Quran, Allah mentioned that you cannot say off to your parent. So somebody will say, you know what, I can't slap them, yeah? No, you cannot. If an off you cannot say, then what even could be harmful and even worse than, you know, off, it's prohibited by necessity. You know, they said bil awla, by default. It's knowing that is haram. But what you have done here, qiyas. Let's call it qiyas. And in the ayah, فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. Then you make that measurement based on the Quran and Sunnah. فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ إِن كُنتُم تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. So those four were hinted in one ayah. That's the main sources of our tashri'ah. It's very important that every Muslim knows that simple things, to have assurance that our scholars work hard to make it very accessible and very easy and easy to digest, easy to understand, that our Islamic principles and Sharia muhkama, our deen, is very unique and special and very clear. And its power comes from its clarity. And just we need just to have more trust for the effort of the scholars and read and try to understand their effort. And in the same time, that's, you know, something what we have to appreciate. And in the same time that we have to continue their effort, you know, by passing, you know, message to others, and at the same time, you know, gaining some of those tools. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the best of understanding. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله.